Stories of visual arts, let's go. Faith gods, what an image. Then you are already beginning to guess that we are talking about rock paintings. Yes, indeed. But not everything is so clear. Everything is much more complicated than it might seem at first sight. And the first glance is the view of the European paleoethnologists André Leroy-Guérin and Henri Breuil, who believed, and with good reason, that the brain, Homo sapiens sapiens, of a reasonable Cro-Magnon man, at some point, he reached such a degree of development that he had craving for the beautiful. But are the images on the walls on the vaults of the cave of Lascaux Altamira von de Gaume Frères manifestation, cravings for the beautiful, or maybe there is something deeper here, something more serious? When professional artists look at these resting bison, for some reason they are called wounded bison in the literature. It is completely unclear to me why, but it does not matter in principle. They are surprised that, how can you create such a thing without having a school behind you? 36,000 years ago, when the first images appeared according to radiocarbon dating, rock art first images, there would be no question of any school, and indeed, they appear suddenly, if you like, in a historical sense at the same time as so. And what does it all mean? Who taught these people who don't have the slightest? The idea of figurativeness is to create literally masterpieces of art. These drawings are masterpieces of the court. Of course, do we have the answer in our hands? No, but we have hypotheses, which, in general, in my opinion, are close to the truth. There are a great many hypotheses. And these hypotheses, I will tell you those of them that, in my opinion, solve. The mystery of these images is being solved. Of course you have noticed that this is an exclusively animal in the caves. Ancient man practically did not leave images of a man, of little men, icons of little men depicted. And the first more or less expressive, artistically designed, and noteworthy images of a person appear in the Sahara wall about 6,000 years at most. Before the birth of Christ, all that was seen before were little men dancing, men like Conan Doyle. But no more than that. These are certainly signs, but not an artistic image. And the artistic image of an animal is found at least 36,000 years ago, if you trust radiocarbon. But we trust him. Everyone scolds him, but nevertheless everyone. And here is this bull in the cave of Lascaux. What is in Franco-Cantabria? What is Franco-Cantabria? I will say a little below. The original has 6 meters. I will say more. The surfaces are specially treated in order to apply paint so that it was convenient. Moreover, special scaffolding was built. Traces of them have been found. Ancient man not only created but also renovated. These images were worked in 3 colors by the famous Paleolithic colorful triad, namely red ochre trivalent iron salts burnt in a fire, white river club mixed with animal fat, and black animal bones buried in a fire mixed with blood and fat. Very resistant dyes, but they suffer from blue-green algae. Let's remember this circumstance. You will say that for blue-green algae you need water. No, you do not need humidity. That's enough. So the Upper Paleolithic colorful triad is the most common artistic tactic of ancient man. Blue-green and other ones are practically not found in the European school, the founders of which were, as I have already said, André Leroy-Guérin and Abbot Henri Breuil. He claims that the craving for beauty appeared simultaneously and that these images appeared on the walls immediately, of course, on a historical scale, whereas the school is Soviet and it was a school of the Russian school does not exist, for a number of objective reasons. You all understand them well, but the Soviet school of paleoethnology existed. And she was very effective, in my opinion, one of the most prominent representatives of it. There is a Brandeis Stolen in which, of course, he looked at all these processes from a position. Historical materialism, he had no other choice. Even if he wanted to look at things differently, but he is very logical in his reasoning. And I explain this logic in detail in the course of the history of art and creative practice. At school, the profile is here, of course, in all these depths to such an extent. We will not die with you. We must understand what moved us. An ancient man when he depicted animals but did not pose as himself. If it were just a craving for the beautiful, then the female figure would be the number 1 figure. It is not there, as I have already said. Higher. 4,500 years ago, 4,500 years before the birth of Christ, the first little bit of art. Before that, human images were just sing, but an animal in all its glory. 35, 36, maybe even 40,000 years. Before Christmas, how to explain this and how these images appeared almost simultaneously? In vast territories that do not communicate with each other in Franco-Cantabria. And in the Urals, what is Franco-Cantabria? These are scientific regions, non-political, not economic. Scientific. A few kilometers to the west and a few kilometers to the east of the Franco-Spanish border there are a lot of karst caves. And in these karst caves, of course, children accidentally discovered drawings. They accidentally entered these caves because the entrances to them were blocked by rockfalls a long time ago. They looked at and marveled at what they saw with flashlights, called adults. Adults turned to the Academy of Sciences. Scientists came and clapped the kids on the shoulders with the words, "Well done, you draw well." Children were offended. Children suffer a lot when they are not believed. when they say amazing things, but if these things are true, the child suffers incredibly. When he was caught making up stories, which is quite natural for the young man, in general, does not really take offense at this, but when he told the truth and they did not believe him. It's a very serious injury, but in the end I had to believe it, and you know why. But because either Andrea Huron or Henri Breuil. But we paid attention to this and similar cave paintings in the USA. And the children were somewhat stunned. They could not know that in glacial Europe, there was a 40 that looks like this. The children could not know that there were monkeys in glacial Europe, and the children could not know that there were elephants in glacial Europe, not mammoths, but elephants. What did a saber-toothed tiger look like, and so on. They could fake cats, dogs, cows, horses. But in the end, Lviv was not really understood then. And did you know that you were also found in glacial Europe? The fauna of glacial Europe was much richer. What is paradoxical now, but the fact is Igor Chubb. That's when I had to think seriously. It looks like the guys are telling the truth. They caught on in time. Because the blue-green algae began to devour these images, they began to wither. For example, today Lesko's cave was simply called up and let in through an armored door. There are 20 people in special German costumes per month according to the official documentary permission of the French Ministry of Culture. Well, that's how they protect the national heritage. The hypothesis that this is a manifestation of a craving for beauty does not stand up to criticism. As we have already said, there must have been a man then, well, like the Greeks. What? Then how did you manage to achieve such a degree of perfection in such a short period of time? An instant on a historical scale is a period of time paradoxically, but really ancient man learned perfect drawing immediately by artists who, exhausted by long studies, if they hear me now, they will twist the finger at my temple and say that it is impossible in the same way. Abram Davidovich Stolyer also spoke. He just insisted that the school was formed slowly and for a very long time, but there is no evidence. There is no convincing evidence of all radiocarbon over a huge space, with distances of up to 5,000 kilometers between points between karst caves. Indicates that the skill appeared immediately. Such a thing is possible. Such a thing is possible. And the answer to this question gives a phenomenal story that happened in the Soviet Union in the middle of the 20th century. Have you ever heard anything about this girl? Her name is Nadia Rasheva. Incredible talent. The daughter of a Soviet officer and a Mongolian woman, lived in Moscow and died at the age of 17. This happens. Unfortunately, she left behind amazing drawings. At the same time, I have never studied anywhere, but I am a very talented child. Tell me. Talented, but not enough talents. We also need someone to show and teach us none of this. There was no centaur market with a wreath installed on her grave when she was asked, Nadia, how did you manage it, and how do you manage it? She replied, I just see these images in front of me, and it's enough for me to outline theme. The journalists believed that the girl did not want to talk about it. She was hiding her creative method. She was shy, but there was still an explanation. There are a great many to find, but modern science indicates that yes, she really saw these images in front of her because she was a dash person. Top tick to whom what is a person and top tick this person, which is characterized by non-pathological hallucinations. The fact is that now there is no doubt. The man of antiquity possessed the ability, or rather suffered from non-pathological hallucinations. This is a manifestation of brain imperfection. It is proved that the legs, in modern computer language, are hard. The ancient man has exactly the same as ours, and we have the same as him. Before the software, the software has been improved throughout this time. The controls of the brain of ancient man were, to put it mildly, far from perfect, and the visual images accumulated during the day. As a result, they surfaced especially in a state of pure sleep and were so vivid, so convincing, that the person did not doubt that in front of him was that object, that being, and maybe even a deceased relative, that it's all in reality. And in general, the boundary between sleep and reality for ancient man was blurred. This ability began to go away for some reason that it is actually harmful for survival. Optical illusions. Although this is not an optical illusion, it is an error of perception. It is a self-excitation of receptive fields from the occipital cortex of the brain. This is actually not good. That can lead to death. It led to the death of many in the end. Natural selection removed them. There are only a few who will later become shamans, those who have not lost the ability to. Optimism eventually became shamans. But why the animal? And so we came to that. Strange as it may seem, paradoxical as it may seem to you and me at first glance, but really, here are these beautiful pictures, in particular in the cave of Altamira. What is in the ranks of Cantabria but on the Spanish side? Ant was created by optical means using the Upper Paleolithic colorful triad, as I have already told you. Red ochre, black paint, white paint. They were painted simply in an apparently visible way. The image today is the leading hypothesis. This image hung in front of a man in front of an artist who was most likely a shaman. Why? Because even when you're just tracing the outline, even when you're copying from the visible, it still takes time, and therefore you must be freed from the collective hunt. Therefore, the fact that it was done by a privileged person Whether it's a man, a woman, a child, an old man, or it's quite possible that an old man. The Bushman's experience is evidence of this, but let's not get distracted by the Bushman. This man. He spent a lot of time creating such drawings and was allowed to do so. But at the same time, what did he depict? And that's the mystery. And the answer is given by Zubov in his lectures on primitive religions. He has no doubt that these spaces are above all, of course. Huge balls in the caves of Alaska are the essence of holy things, the essence of ancient temples. They prayed with this image like this. Well, you won't pray. No, although you will certainly look at your cat. But you definitely won't pray for a dog. You probably will, because we have Catholicism. But they certainly didn't pray for a dog. Why, yes, because they are not animals at all. These are spirits in the form of animals. Why so? Well, first of all, because that's such a monstrous idea that man is the king of nature can only come to mind in Avramic brains. The man of antiquity perceived himself as an equal among equals. And he believed that animals just speak a different language and considered the intelligent. And in general, he was right, he was just like them. But at the same time, he understood very clearly that he was different from them. He understood at the same time that he came from some kind of beast, so totemism rose. But we will not be distracted by it now, but the important thing is that a man of antiquity, of great antiquity, even a Neanderthal, apparently 200,000 years ago, when there was still no Cro-Magnon in Europe, later, he would come from Africa to glacial Europe. He already guessed that the world was threefold. What is the lower world where they live? Dark spirits and the souls of the dead, but they live an ordinary life. There are no hellish torments, no such nonsense. There is none of this Abrahamic, and even non-Abrahamic epistemological, so it will be more accurate. Here is the world of the medians. The median among them is our world and the upper world. Where the gods live there is no access to them, and they are in general. No one is particularly interested, but spirits live in all three worlds. In innumerable quantities, just innumerable, everything is filled with spirits. How do they look? These spirits. But if, say, a bear or a mammoth appears in the cave before going to bed, or a saber-toothed tiger, but in reality it is not there, but a person sees it and does not doubt that he sees it. Yes, who came he is. I did not understand and could not have an idea what it was. The optical effect is that it is a self-excitation of the visual cortex, a manifestation of software imperfections, and so on and so on. He believed his hallucination was that a spirit had appeared to him, but a spirit in the image of an animal. Why? But because man could not imagine anything else in ancient times. Because the ghost is wild but cute. Yes, remember the wonderful cartoon about Carlson here covered with a sheet? This was beyond the power of an ancient man. Of course, he was not capable of such abstractions, such abstract generalizations, simply culturally. He was thinking very concretely, reasoning so that the spirit, it's not me, I know for sure that I'm not a spirit. And if I'm not a spirit, then a spirit. It will look like anything but not like me. He will look different, he will be different from me. And who is different from me? What is in the visual experience of ancient man and animal? The animal is nothing else, so you just have to look like animals. This is the heavenly host. These animals are spirits and of course damage such a picture. Sacrilege is possible. Totems are not excluded, but totemic spirits, or alternatively, the so-called animal power. What is animal power? These are helper spirits. These are the ones who sympathize with you in the middle world and help you solve your problems by regulating your affairs. In the lower world you have a lot to do. The soul in a dream. She goes to the lower world to communicate with deceased relatives. She longs for understanding for her. Let me remind you that the deceased relatives live the same life as in the average world. No Greek ideas about Eidos is an image that forgets its earthly life. There are no ideas about Asian torment or heavenly bliss, none of this. Everything is very simple and very specific, so today the answer is rock carvings are the essence of an icon reproduced in an optical way.